All right, so just to begin, I would like to state for the record that today is July 10th, 2020, and my name is Ben Bauman, and I'm here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm speaking via phone with Dennis Avery, who is in Evansville, Indiana. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we are doing an interview for the Indiana Oral History Initiative. So just to start off, when and where were you born?
A hospital in Evansville, Indiana.
Okay. And what year was that?
1946.
Okay. And what were your parents' names?
My dad's name was Theodore Delbert, Thelbert, Avery.
Okay.
And my mother was Frances.
Right. Okay. And where was your family from originally? Have you always lived in Evansville, or?
No, in fact, they lived in Warwick County, up in the Folsomville area.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Which is about 35 miles from Evansville.
Okay.
But Warwick County didn't have a hospital, so that's why they
Right.
came to Evansville.
And how long has your family lived in Indiana?
My dad for his entire life, but I think my great-grandfather settled in Heilman, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Heilman.
Yeah.
A long time ago. I'm not sure exactly when.
Interesting. Okay. And what were your parents' occupations?
My dad worked at Whirlpool, which is manufactured refrigerators at the time, and my mother was, I guess, was considered a housewife.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Or homemaker.
Right. Right.
They got a divorce when I was 3, though. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you have any siblings at all?
Yes, my dad was married 6 times, and my mother was married 5 times.
Wow.
So I have a whole bunch of half brothers and sisters scattered all over.
Okay. Wow.
I think 13 was
13. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big family. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but as I said, all but one were half brothers and sisters. I did have a full sister though.
Oh, okay.
I was the oldest.
Right. Interesting. Okay. And so that's really interesting. How would you describe your childhood then?
Well, we were raised on a farm.
Okay.
I was raised by my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
In the between Folsomville and Tennyson on a farm, and basically hard work and growing up in a rural area where it didn't come in contact with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But we worked the farm.
Sure.
And went to Folsomville Grade School.
Okay.
And Boonville High School.
Interesting. And so would you say that your grandparents were the most influential people in your childhood?
Probably my grandmother.
Your grandmother?
And grandfather.
Okay.
Yes, my grandparents, yes.
And what understanding, if any, did you have about your family's political beliefs as a young child?
It was a mixed. Politically, my grandmother was a Republican, and my grandfather worked the polls for the Democrats every year.
That's interesting. Wow.
And my dad was a Democrat, and he lived nearby, and my mom lived the next county over in Spencer County, and she was a Republican. So it was very interesting politically.
Yeah, I bet.
But my grandpa refused to take Grandma to the polls, and she would call the Republican precinct committeeman. Of course, she didn't drive.
Okay.
The precinct committeeman would take her to the polls, and when she would come in, she would always tell him that she was coming in to cancel his vote.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. So, did your grandparents have sort of political debates at all around you growing up?
Not too much.
Okay.
Grandma, and they both express their opinions on occasion.
Sure.
About different things. But my grandfather had a third grade education.
Okay.
And my grandmother had an eighth grade education. So it was basically they argued the image of the party. Grandma believed the Democrat Party was the war party.
Okay.
Because World War I, World War II,
Right.
Korean War, Vietnam War all started under Democrat administrations.
Sure.
She felt. And my grandfather believed the Democrat Party was for the working man. So he'd always been a Democrat. So and Grandma had probably pretty much always been a Republican.
Right.
But anyhow, they always voted though.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. What about your parents? Do you remember them having any political views at all, or?
Yeah, my dad. I don't really. My mother, because I didn't see her very often.
Right.
But and I wasn't even aware that she was Republican until later on.
Oh, okay.
And my dad, he was a Democrat because of union issues. Yeah, he was a member of Local 808 union in Whirlpool.
Okay.
And member of the National Farm Workers also, since he farmed.
Yeah.
But during the Reagan administration, Dad switched, became a Republican. He got born again.
Okay.
And because of religious issues, and then when they he was disabled because of diabetes.
Okay.
So when they cut his benefits, he became a Democrat again.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And my mother, on the other hand, she became a Democrat later on because of war issues, and I think my influence too.
Okay.
She became a Democrat, so they kind of switched.
Wow. Okay.
My dad came back to the Democrat Party though.
Yeah.
Because of the benefit issues,
right,
security issues.
That's interesting. Now let's see. What about your educational experiences? Did you have any favorite subjects in school or extracurricular activities you were involved in?
Well, in high school, history and government were my favorites.
Okay.
I didn't really involve myself in too much or much of anything really, because I had to get home, and being the oldest, I was responsible for taking care of the animals.
Yeah.
And at the farm, because Dad usually worked second and third shifts.
Right.
So I had a lot of responsibilities being the oldest. But in college, it was my favorite subjects were history and political science, and although I was a business major, I didn't really like business courses. And I'm not sure why I became a business major, but I did.
And you went to the University of Evansville, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you have any views growing up about the state of Indiana or what it was like to be a Hoosier?
Not really. I think on a farm, I've always felt very strongly about the environment. And,
okay.
So that was one thing that I always, and nature and the outdoors. And,
sure.
I always had strong feelings about those issues.
Okay.
But I didn't have too many political views. I think I identified with the Democrat Party because of John Kennedy.
Oh, okay.
But he was young and vibrant, and I argued with friends in high school about Kennedy and Nixon. And,
yeah.
But I didn't really have strong views until college.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So you mentioned you were a business major in college. Was that something that you were thinking about doing already in high school, or was it something you just decided on when you went to college?
It was something I decided on in college.
Okay.
My dad wanted me to major in something that would make a good income, so he encouraged me to be an engineering major.
Okay.
But I didn't have real strong science and math skills, since Folsonville did not prepare me for in those areas too strongly.
Yeah.
Small school. I think there was 7 in my class and 2 in the class in front of me, so we were a very small school.
Okay.
And even though we got a lot of individual attention, I'm not sure it was we really were adequately prepared for high school. And then
Right.
and I was just encouraged not encouraged to prepare also for college. I don't know what. I think some friends went to college, and I decided I'd go too, but I wasn't sure why at the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think young people need to have encouragement when they're young and to adequately prepare themselves.
Right. Sure.
And that's the thing with first time college students, which is what I was in my family, and is that somebody has to have to break through the ceiling, and
Right.
and I was the one that did that. But since then, I've had siblings that have done quite well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, while you were in college, were you involved in any particular clubs or organizations, or?
Basically, intramural sports.
Okay.
And I was in the college Democrats and the college. I was involved in college politics also.
Oh, okay. And
I was not a leader. I was just a helper at that time.
Okay. And how did college sort of impact your political views?
I think the war, even though the University of Evansville is a very small, very conservative university,
Yeah.
I got involved with a group of people that we were opposed to the Vietnam War,
Yeah.
and so that's where I started my opposition to the war, and later on got involved in the Eugene McCarthy for president campaign because he was opposed to the war.
Yeah. Okay.
And although Robert Kennedy was too, but he was late in coming to the table. So
Right.
But I was supported Eugene McCarthy very early, and worked for his campaign. In fact, I was a delegate to the Democrat state convention that year.
Oh. Okay.
And, I had a quality that when for delegate to state conventions, so many people run, they list you in alphabetical order, and my last name is Avery, so I was near the top.
Okay.
So that was what enabled me to get elected as delegate. I think there were 18 in my ward running that year.
Interesting. And how did you view your college experiences at the time overall?
I enjoyed it. It was I really liked it. It was the first time I'd perhaps been on my own without having to work on the farm, and
Yeah.
it was I enjoyed the camaraderie of friends. And,
Sure.
And later, my last 3 years, my sophomore, junior, senior year, I had to work also. So that made it more difficult because I had to work and go to school at the same time.
Right.
And U of E is a small, not-for-profit liberal arts university, and being private, it's a little more expensive than publics were. And I'm not sure. My dad encouraged me to go there because it was closer to home.
Okay.
And that was before the University of Southern Indiana started, so that's why I went there.
Right. And what did you hope to do after graduation?
Well, I didn't honestly know for sure.
Okay.
Because my major was business, so I interviewed for business type jobs, but then I got drafted. For a year I worked in insurance and didn't really like it, but then I got drafted, so that took 2 years out of my life.
Yeah.
And I got sent to Vietnam, which I was opposed to.
For sure. Yeah. And what was that experience like?
Well, I had a college degree at that point, so I became a personnel specialist, and was very fortunate that I didn't see any combat.
Okay.
But nevertheless, it was still, a learning experience, and I'm not. I don't really regret going, because I didn't have to do things that I would have been traumatized about.
Right.
But I did go because I felt my responsibility.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's definitely. Yeah.
Also, I came from a small area where a lot of my peers would have probably gone if I didn't. When I was drafted, they would have gone to the next person. So
right.
I thought that would have been not fair to them. So
sure.
They might not have fared as well, because most of them did not have a college background.
Yeah. And what was your parents' reaction to you getting drafted?
Well, my dad didn't talk much, and nor did my grandpa. My grandpa was very, very worried, because she had, being anti-war, she had during World War II, one of her best friends and our next door neighbor lost 2 sons in World War II. So I think that's one of the reasons that she was so opposed to war.
Okay.
And so she was very worried about me and about what might happen. And also, after college, I did apply for conscientious objector status too, since I was opposed to the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I received this conscientious objector status. I didn't think I would, because I did not meet the standards. You're supposed to be opposed to all war, and I was opposed to that war and not all war. So when I got it, I was somewhat surprised. I was just really trying to make a point that I was opposed to that war, and but then I turned it down. I didn't feel that I met the standard, and I didn't want other people to have to go in my place, and so I turned it down, and they had awarded a different status, which made me eligible for the draft, and was drafted.
Wow. Okay. So that must have been, I guess, quite the experience, and I imagine that you must have had a lot of thoughts go through your head when you first learned you were drafted. That's.
Yeah. It was somewhat traumatizing.
I bet.
I was married at that time, and
oh wow, really? Okay.
And so it was traumatic for her too, and she moved in with her parents while I left, and down in Kentucky. Her family was from Princeton, Kentucky. And
when did you get married?
That was my first marriage. That was 69, I believe.
Okay. And then you got married again later. And yeah. What year was that?
What year was I married?
Yeah.
No, you. What year? Yeah. 2004.
Okay, got it.
I'm not supposed to forget those things.
That's right. Yeah. And what's your wife's name?
Patty or Patricia.
Okay. So, after the war, what did you do?
I worked in insurance for a while again. I came back to the same company again. And I was not... I didn't really like insurance all that much, and so needless to say, you got to really live and breathe that insurance if you're going to be successful. And this is the same with all sales. And at the same time, I got involved in politics too, and was spending a lot of time in politics. And so, as I said, you got to live and breathe whatever your selling, and I was not doing that, so I was not overly successful in insurance and later on real estate. I did real estate too, several years later.
Okay. And let's see, do you have any children at all?
Yes, I have a daughter. She was adopted.
Oh, okay.
And, she lives in Toronto.
Interesting.
And has 2 children. So I have 2 grandchildren living in Toronto.
Yeah.
Then I have some stepchildren too.
Oh, okay.
And, a stepson living in the Netherlands.
Wow.
And a stepdaughter living in Virginia. And a stepson who's disabled living with us.
Okay.
And then we lost a stepdaughter last year in a car accident.
Oh, no, okay. Sorry to hear that.
And then I have a total of 5 grandchildren, 2 in Canada. The stepson living in the Netherlands has 2 children living in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Wow. Okay.
So he and his wife got a divorce. And so and then we have a grandson living in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay.
So as you can see, no one lives nearby except David, who lives in the basement.
Okay. Wow, but yeah, you have your family's pretty spread out then.
That they are. And right now, we were seeing them on occasion. We would travel to see them, or they would travel to see us. But with the coronavirus, we've not been able to do that.
Right, of course.
Now they won't let us go to Canada, so because of our policies.
Yeah, that's true.
Brazil. We don't want to go to Brazil right now, but
right.
But we would like to go. Our 2 grandsons in Brazil. They're all little. All of them are, I think, under 8. The oldest is 8, I believe.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. So, when did you get seriously involved in politics?
When I got back from Vietnam.
Okay.
I got involved in Vanderbilt County Young Democrats, and the following year I became president of the Vanderbilt County Young Democrats.
Oh, okay.
And ran in 1972 for precinct committeeman and delegate to the state convention again.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran for delegate state convention, and so I won both. And I've been involved ever since as the local organization politics. And in '74 is when I ran for state representative. I talked to one of the county officials about running for office, and he told me about a vacancy on the ticket for state representative. So I ran. And, it was 1974. It was a very Republican district. Okay. But 4 people could run for 2 seats. It was a multi-member district, 2-member district. We had 2 Republican incumbents, but one of them was a school teacher, and the other was I think a realtor. He got a realtor, an insurance agent, but he was defeated in the primary by the mayor's administrative assistant, Randy Shepard, who later on became Chief Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court. Wow. And he was bright, he was articulate, and everyone just assumed he would win, but as it turned out, I beat him. Wow. An eyelash after a recount, but I got a few more. I had a few more votes he did going into the recount. After the recount, I had way more. But there were some mistakes made, so I ended up with a pretty good margin after the recount. But anyhow, I had in '76. I had to run against him again, and won also by another narrow margin. He was a very good person. Okay. And I respected him a lot, and still do. Yeah. That's back when we didn't. It wasn't life or death in politics. It was right. We could respect each other but still run against each other. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. Yeah, most people I talk to that had served like you did, from many different eras in state politics, says that there's been this change in the way politics is conducted. Let's see.
Yep.
So when you first became involved in politics, what were the key issues or legislation that you championed or fought against?
Well, during the campaign, I talked about there was a terrible child abuse incident in Evansville.
Okay.
And I said I would do something about it. And when I was elected, I met with some of the activists in that group and introduced child abuse legislation, required reporting and required child protection service and child protection team and gathering of evidence and things like that. That seems like they made were long overdue and made sense. And it took 4 years, but that actually became law, and that was probably the issue that I got a lot of attention from that, and especially the way it was the Republicans killed it the first 2 years, but they got a lot of pressure, and they finally and as a member of the minority to get that type of major bill through is not often the case, and so it gave me the credibility that I think helped more than most issues. There was another issue that I think, I'm not sure exactly what year, but it was the issue of license branch reform. In Indiana, in order to drive a car, you have to have you have to get them titled, you have to get a driver's license, and you have to get a license plate.
Right.
And all of those branches were run by the majority party of the governor's party.
Okay.
They appointed the branch managers, and so the Republican Party, is always usually a Republican in Indiana, so the Republican Party got basically a kickback on everything, and I campaigned against that. And after several years, it became law. In fact, I sued the state of Indiana over it, and I won at the county level. They had it transferred to Posey County, and I actually won in Posey County. And then the Republicans in the next session of the legislature undid the effect of my lawsuit. So, but then when Bob Orr ran against Wayne Townsend, Wayne Townsend picked it up as an issue, and so Bob Orr said he would do something about it, and they did. It became law. Finally, the change in the license branch system, and I think it's worked pretty well since.
Oh, okay. And, that's good. Yeah.
I didn't get credit for it because
right.
I was always back then we were always in the minority. So,
right.
But nevertheless, it happened, and but I know I had one cartoon they had of me like Don Quixote tilting at windmills.
Wow.
I also dealt with a lot of issues dealing with poverty and child abuse and child abuse and child neglect and the homeless issue. Over the years, I had a lot of bills dealing with homelessness.
Yeah.
And then another major issue, because I was viewed to be liberal.
Right.
And over the years, people called me liberal, which is I am, as was. Mm-hmm. But I recognized that one thing that I had in common with a lot of Republicans was issues of good government and things like patronage I was opposed to, and the so-called 2% club, I opposed that, and at the county level. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, I started talking about issues of restructuring government and government reform, and became very active in the sunset process. Indiana, for several years, we reviewed, over the course of 10 years, we reviewed every element of state government. And, of course, that also transferred to local government, too, because local government exists at the discretion of state government.
Yeah.
And so I was very much involved in government restructuring and government reform. But that's also back when Republicans were in the majority, so I usually was a co-sponsor or co-author of the Sunset Committee recommendations.
Okay.
And that, I think gave me a lot of credibility because I was concerned about good government. But at the same time, my own party got a little upset with me at the time because I was usually co-sponsoring a Republican bill dealing with issues that sometimes Democrats didn't particularly like. And
right.
I'm not sure why, but I'm afraid that happens.
Okay.
Because,
yeah.
Sometimes it's issues of patronage, whether it be eliminating an agency. For example, I remember when we eliminated the watch repair board, or eliminate a licensing agency, or merging a group of licensing agencies like the barbers and the beauticians. You offend some of the practitioners, and they have supporters in the legislature.
Yeah, yeah.
So I enjoyed those years because I was working with Republicans like Ray Richardson and Steve Moberly.
Okay.
There used to actually be progressive Republicans too.
Yeah.
They don't exist too much anymore.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, things have shifted.
So that was another major issue of mine, was restructuring and government reform.
Sure. Okay. Did you have any national or local political heroes or mentors?
Not too much. I was kind of I plowed my own course for the most part.
Okay.
But there was another legislator from Evansville that I had a lot of respect for, and he advised me a lot. Sometimes it helped keep me out of trouble, and sometimes also he got me in a little bit of trouble too. His
Okay.
name was Jeff Hayes, Hays.
Yeah.
He was a state rep from the adjoining district, also a progressive or liberal Democrat, and we were concerned about different issues. Some of the same issues, but he was in the consolidating city-county government.
Yeah.
And I was opposed to it, consolidation. So I represent a much more rural area than he did.
Right.
And, so I'm afraid we didn't always agree, but nevertheless I had tremendous respect for him. And when he ran for mayor one year, I think it was 73 or 75, I can't remember what year it was. The local Democrat Party backed a city councilman, and I backed him for mayor, and he won in the primary against I think Jerry Lindsay, who's a good person too.
Okay.
But Jeff was a friend, and I backed Jeff, and got in a lot of trouble. In fact, the party opposed me in the next election.
Oh my gosh.
In the primary. And
Yeah.
I still won, but I'm afraid that one of the things that not a good idea is to get involved in local government if you're a state representative, get involved in the local party fights. And I tended to do that a little too much.
Okay. Yeah. So when you first ran your very first campaign to get into the General Assembly in the 1970s, what was your campaign strategy, or did you not really have a particular strategy?
I didn't. I don't think many people thought I'd win.
Okay.
Because it was a Republican district, and there were really two very, very capable, very able incumbents.
Yeah.
One was an incumbent, one had defeated an incumbent, but they were very, very capable people. And so no one would thought I would win. So so I didn't raise any. I raised $350 in my first campaign.
Yeah.
And that's unheard of today.
Yeah.
In fact, that was pretty much unheard of back then. But
yeah, that is.
But I just did door to door constantly, and I did the factory gates. I stood in front of factory gates in the morning when they went in, and sometimes the second shift, and I did the fairs and various social events. I did everything I could to meet people.
Sure.
And I started doing door to door when it was. I remember one time I was knocking on a door and had a Fu Manchu mustache, and a guy came to the door and I had little icicles on my mustache, and he said, "Well, anybody with icicles in their mustache, I'm going to vote for." So, that's how soon I started my door to door, and I went through the election. I remember on election night, Randy Shepard, who was the Republican, we became somewhat friends during the campaign. Or at least we talked to each other during the campaign and got along pretty well.
Yeah.
And he invited me to his party of his co-workers, his workers and supporters the night before the election. And I told him I would love to go, but I'm afraid I have to do door to door. And so I did door to door that night. Could have gone to Randy's party. But,
wow.
and as it turned out, I won just by an eyelash, so I guess it was a good idea.
Yeah, it worked out, yeah. What was your first election day like?
Basically, stood and passing out a little card that I had printed for that purpose, and went to the Democrat headquarters on election night and to wait the results to come in, and it was back and forth all night long until it looked like I won.
Yeah.
That night, but then woke up the next morning and the news said that I got third place out of the four, and so I was somewhat surprised by that.
Yeah.
But then by that afternoon, they had me in first place.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know how that mistake happened, but they had me in first place, and then my running mate, who ended up getting third, demanded a recount, and then Randy, who got fourth, ended up demanding a recount. So it was several weeks before I knew whether I won or not.
Yeah. And when
I said there was some mistakes made.
Yeah.
One precinct, which is the most Republican precinct in my district, they didn't have my name on the ballot.
Oh my gosh.
And they had the Republicans but not the two Democrats. They had two Democrats, but it was from another district. They had wrong candidate, state representative Democrats on the ballot. So
wow.
They had to throw the whole precinct out. So I ended up picking up several hundred votes in that one precinct because they threw it out.
Oh my gosh.
And there was another precinct where they had me for zero votes, and I thought, well, goodness, even the most unpopular person in the world is going to get a vote or two, and so I ended up, I think, picking up 60 or 80 votes there too. They just didn't They used to go to the back of the machine, and they would announce the numbers, and someone else would write them down.
Yeah.
They had written my votes on the wrong line, so it was just a mistake. But
yeah.
But nevertheless, when they corrected that, I ended up with, I think it's 80 or 90 votes, and that's a big jump.
Sure.
Yeah. Everyone keeps talking about the old machine being a lot better. They're not. A lot of mistakes are made because human beings make mistakes.
Right. Naturally, yeah. And so, how did it feel when you finally discovered that you won?
Well, needless to say, I was on cloud nine. It was exciting.
Yeah.
I came from a very poor background to being a state representative, and I'd never been in Indianapolis or never been to the State House before. So it's an exciting thing too.
Sure.
And, Jeff Hayes advised me on what to do and what not to do, and showed me where the bathroom was at and things like that.
Yeah, there you go.
But
what was it like to?
anyhow, very exciting.
Yeah, yeah. What was it like to walk into the State House your first day in office?
Well, it was very. It was the granite, the columns were beautiful. The building was, I thought, was beautiful, even though back then it was in really terrible shape.
Yeah.
It allowed the State House to deteriorate something awful, but nevertheless, for me, it was exciting and a beautiful, beautiful building, and
Sure.
with all these other legislators that had experience from all over Indiana, and they immediately were trying to encourage, because we got, it was also, I won. It was one of the big reasons I won is because it was Watergate too. I worked my butt off.
Yep.
And it was also Watergate.
Okay.
And, a lot of Democrats that weren't supposed to win got elected that year, and my running mate, who didn't work, he lost, and because the difference is I worked and he didn't. He had name ID too, because he had previously held political office in Vanderbilt County, and
Yeah.
but the difference was the hard work, and also Watergate was helpful too.
Yeah.
And also there was another local issue on the ballot that year, and that was the issue of consolidation of city-county government, and I opposed it, and both the Republicans in my district supported it, and it went down, I think, by a 3-1 vote. So I'm sure I picked up a lot of Republican farmers that voted for me for that reason.
Right.
The rural part of the district really opposed it, and there was a lot of rural area in my district then. And but anyhow, as I was saying earlier, we had leadership race with all the new Democrats. We were in the majority, and they were there were people that were courting us to vote for them for leadership, and we had a person in our area running for. I think it was majority leader Mike Phillips, and so Mike won, and then Phil Bainbridge was running for Speaker of the House, and Jeff Hayes encouraged me to vote for him. I didn't know either one of them that well. I knew Mike, as we're from the same county, but I didn't know him well. And Jeff encouraged me to vote for Phil, which helped. I got some fairly decent committee assignments, probably not the best, but I didn't know what to ask for. But anyhow, that was kind of nice being wooed to support different people for legislative leadership.
Yeah, okay. Now, with each re-election that you had, did your feelings about serving as a legislator change at all, or?
I enjoyed campaigning.
Okay.
Obviously, that's one thing in order to be successful, you got to enjoy it. Especially, I always had a Republican district for the first, I think, 18 years. I had a very Republican district. And after the first reapportionment, it got more Republican. And so all but, I think, one time, I had a challenger, a Republican challenger. One time I didn't have a Republican, but I had a Libertarian challenger, so that was a pretty easy one.
Okay.
But my margins got more. Well, I don't think I had a close election after the first two elections. After that, the margin got larger and larger, and then Democrats, the last two reapportionments, we were in the majority, so my district became more Democratic, and that made it easier. But I still campaigned.
Yeah.
And, I know there was one election I didn't have any. That was when we had a Democratic district, and I didn't have an opponent that election at all, not even a Libertarian.
Wow.
But so anyhow, I always enjoyed campaigning, so it was not a problem for me. There were some elections where there was a lot of negative back when the Tea Party developed, for example, there were a lot of negative campaigning against me, which I didn't particularly like. But that's the way politics changed over the years.
Sure. Did you?
And it was one of the reasons I ended up leaving. I guess when I got tired of.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah.
That was 2010. I also had some disagreements with my own leadership too. So. Okay. It was time that I do something else. I served 36 years. So.
Right. Yeah, long time.
Yes, it was.
Did your campaign strategies change at all with the different elections you took part in, or?
Well, as I could afford,
yeah.
As you know, over the years, when I was targeted a few times, Republicans spent a lot of money to beat me, and so I had to raise a lot more money.
Yeah.
And so I had to constantly had to have fundraisers, and so that changed and been less door-to-door campaigning. I always did the door-to-door campaigning, and I always went to the county fair and different community social events too.
Yeah.
So there was less time to do those, and you had to constantly have fundraisers, and that part changed, and I did not like that part. It seemed like when you run every 2 years, you've got to constantly ask people for contributions. And,
yeah.
And that makes politics a lot less fun.
Right, sure. When you were serving in the General Assembly for the first time, what were your expectations for the legislative process, and was it more or less complicated than you expected?
It was. In some ways, it was. In fact, it was more complex than I thought. I thought you just talk about how important your bill was and how
yeah.
How it needed change, but and other people would see the righteousness of your cause and support you. But I realized after a while there was a lot of politics that quite often Democrats, at least in the initial years in the legislature, other than the first two,
yeah,
the majority of the first 2 years, but after that we're in the minority for years. And Republicans basically, and sometimes we get bills to the Senate and they wouldn't even see the light, wouldn't even get a committee hearing.
Right.
That was frustrating, but then I learned another way of getting your bills through, and that would be the amendment process, where you would amend a Republican bill with your language, and just that then you only have to talk to a couple, 3 people to get them to accept your language. They would, if they liked the issue, why they often did.
Yeah.
So I would get the concept through, even though my name was sometimes not on the bill. But that's the part when you serve years in the minority, you learn to accept. I think a lot of people now, they don't understand that, and they're more concerned about getting recognized by doing the bill than accomplishing the goal. And also sometimes people they want to change it immediately, and they don't believe in incremental change. And sometimes in the state of Indiana, maybe you have to do a little bit this year, a little bit the following year, a little bit after that. And I think the confidence of knowing that I could be reelected after a couple terms, I was willing to keep plugging away with the incremental change.
Yeah.
And as opposed to changing the world in one fell swoop. I think maybe when I first was elected, I thought I could do that, but not in the Indiana legislature.
Yeah, I understand.
And I never served with the Democrats in control of the Senate. Well, 2 years I did, yes. The 2 years the Democrats had the Senate, but they lost it immediately. But when the 2 years the Democrats had the Senate, Republicans had the House. So
right.
Republicans usually, have the House and the Senate, so they have a big advantage. in getting their legislative ideas through.
Yeah.
But I never served with us having both the House and the Senate. And they usually have House, Senate, and the governor like they have right now.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
In fact, they have super majorities too, and have for quite some time.
What about when interacting with your constituents? What was that like?
Well, when I was first elected, I had never given a speech, so
Okay.
that was interesting.
Yeah.
And I remember the first TV interview I did was with the local, I think it was Channel 14, the NBC affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
David James was the person that interviewed me, and I kind of panicked during when he asked me the first question.
Okay.
And I was kind of repeating myself repeatedly and rambling. So he basically stopped the interview and said, take a couple of breaths, deep breaths, and get a glass of water here, and we'll do this again. So he was very courteous. And
wow, okay, yeah.
Understood. I don't know that you're always going to see that.
Yeah.
But I always respected David. Still do. He's retired now, though.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that was candidate interviews. And I'm sure that they were interviews individual, not as had individual interviews and not group. So I think my Republican opponents would not have liked the fact that let me do it again or start over.
Right.
But he did. I appreciated that. But anyhow, as I was saying, I was not a good speaker, shall we say. And one of my opponents, Randy, was an attorney, and he was on the debate team in high school and college, and needless to say, it was very good. But he came across as a little not. I'm trying to be courteous here. Basically, not like the average person could not identify with.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And although, as I said, he was, I think one-on-one he was okay, but he just did not come across as to a lot of people. And but later on, I got a lot more experience, and I didn't mind talking to people, and I hated saying the same thing over and over again, so I did not usually use prepared speeches, so I basically winged it for the most part.
Right.
And I've always done that. And when we have legislative forums, meet your legislators, we all used to have all the time, usually every other week when we came home during session. I enjoyed those because it gave me a chance to talk to my constituents, and sometimes they were out for blood, but I always enjoyed it. I enjoyed the back and forth, and sometimes the give and take and the competition.
Sure.
With my colleagues there, the Republican colleagues, where you could challenge each other. I always enjoyed that, and it was fun. A lot of legislators don't like that, and but I didn't have a problem with that, and I enjoyed it. In fact, I think that was my favorite part of running and being a legislator was meeting your constituents on the weekends, talking about the issues, and as I said, the competition with the Republican members that also came. And it's one of the things I think I miss more, because it seems like, in fact, it seems like there's no one cares about my opinion anymore. And,
yeah.
And back then, it was, one thing about politicians, we have an opinion on about everything. So
sure.
And I enjoyed expressing that opinion on even the controversial issues. Sometimes someone would talk about a really controversial subject, and they'd say, which do they want to respond? And I usually had a response, and sometimes it was a good response, and sometimes it did not make the constituent happy. But but I think they appreciated the fact that I had an opinion, and a lot of legislators didn't even respond.
Yeah, true. Yeah, probably.
And that offends, I think, offends even the constituent that asks the controversial questions, or the more than a response that he or she might disagree with.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember the first bill that you sponsored? That became law. I think repealing the referendum for city-county consolidation. It was that was a very minor issue. We had a referendum, and it could have come up every 2 years, but that one was, I think, first. And then the rape shield was the first bill of substance that I think you know it was, that passed and became law. I forgot about that. But there was a very controversial issue of a person that was on trial for rape. Okay.
And when the victim testified, she was her past sexual conduct was admissible, and so they basically talked about her sexual experiences and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there was a TV program on also called A Case of Rape, I believe,
Okay.
about that time. And Elizabeth Montgomery, I think, was the victim. But anyhow, it was a way that defense attorneys, things they used to defend their clients, and by attacking the victim as almost as she deserved it.
Wow.
So anyhow, I passed a law that said that a woman's previous sexual history is inadmissible evidence in a rape trial.
Yeah. Okay.
And it passed and became law.
Yeah.
And to me, it made a lot of sense, and it still does, and it's still law too. A few years after that, there was a case in Evansville where they were trying this guy for rape, and the judge allowed evidence to be admitted about one of the witnesses of her sexual conduct. And because apparently the rapist previously raped this witness, so they used her as in the trial as a witness to show the guy's proclivity for raping women. So anyhow, the judge allowed her evidence. So I introduced a bill also saying that witnesses past sexual conduct is inadmissible evidence in a rape trial, and that became law too. So I had that second rape shield law too. It's called the rape shield.
Okay.
And that's pretty much law in most states, if not all, throughout the country now.
Wow. Okay.
At that time, we weren't first, but we were one of the early states to pass a law like that.
And what year was it passed?
That would have been 75.
75. Okay. Yeah. So.
That was my first year.
Yeah. Early on. Wow.
And I remember there a guy named John Thomas was my co-author. He was a Republican lawyer from Brazil, Indiana, and I think John, being he was on chairman of the judiciary, or at the time we were in the majority, but he was ranking member of the judiciary. He probably could have been the author of that bill, but he was very courteous and let me keep it. And then the last of all was the Senate judiciary chairman. He heard the bill, and I think John Thomas had a lot to do with getting Les to hear the bill too. So you have to develop alliances with Republican members.
Sure.
Of the legislature. That's two people that helped me that first time. And as I said back then, it was not life and death. People were very. We worked together, and I don't think that's the case anymore.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me to my next question. What were the interactions like between members of the General Assembly from opposite parties?
I had several what I consider to be friends that were Republican members, and I mentioned Ray Richardson, who was from Rushville, Indiana.
Yep.
And of course, he went home every night. He didn't do the social scene. And Steve Moberly from Shelbyville, but he also went home every night. But since they're close to Indianapolis, well, those people that like myself, it was over a 3-hour drive for me. But I was involved with them because of the government restructuring, and Ray is a pretty progressive Republican, as was Steve. So we co-authored a lot of each other's bills and laws over the years, and but we developed a friendship, and I hope that's still the case, but I sometimes wonder.
Yeah.
I've not been in the legislature since 2010 now.
Right. Did you see over time in like the 80s and 90s and then the 2000s, did you see a change in the interactions between Democrats and Republicans?
Oh, yeah, I did. There was a constant, and I think a lot of it had to do with the way that campaigns changed. I think it started the year that I don't know when it started, but it got worse when the Republican that became Speaker of the House at the federal level, Newt Gingrich, when he started his tactics in the U.S. Congress, and it seemed like we had Republicans in the Indiana legislature that tried to do the same thing, and then it was basically they would introduce amendments just to embarrass the members of the other party, over the years we did the same thing. We had members that would do the same thing.
Okay.
And it was a weapon that was used to make it more difficult for the other party. And I remember I've introduced some amendments that had a little bit to do with that too. Like I used to introduce environmental amendments that and Republicans seemed like they were always against environmental issues, and so I would introduce environmental issues, and then we were in the minority, and so they would have to vote them down, and so I guess I was a little bit guilty of that myself, but I really believed in the environmental issues, though.
Right.
Too often legislators don't really care about the issue; they just want to embarrass the members of the other party.
Wow. Okay. So some of it's just personal attacks.
And not necessarily personal attacks, just introducing something that, for example, to introducing an abortion amendment on a bill.
Okay.
Sometimes scuttle the bill if it gets on.
Yeah.
And sometimes in order to force members of the other party to vote against it or for it, and depending on the person's position. So those kind of things. And sometimes it's to get, if it's a bill that they want, that will make it.
Hello?
I forget what we call that. Poison pill. Yeah, we put a poison pill on the bill.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that last couple of sentences? The connection, I guess, broke off for a bit.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries.
You say your reception broke off? As I said, sometimes we put legislators would put amendments onto bills that would make it difficult for the bill to pass either in the second house, the Senate, or the House, and we call that a poison pill.
Yeah. Okay.
Where we introduce something that's controversial, and I'm afraid that happens too.
Yeah. What about the interactions between people in the House and Senate? Did you notice any differences between members of the House and Senate?
We really did not. I don't think we developed much of a relationship with members of the second House.
Okay.
But we did. There were a few members that we would develop friendships with, but usually members from our part of the state. And
right.
I'm sure the Republicans from Indianapolis knew the Republicans from Indianapolis a lot more than than members from Evansville. But I'm sure senators, since they were only 50 of them in the same room all day, could develop a better relationship than they did with House members. But we're in session usually at the same time, sometimes late into the evenings.
Okay.
But anyhow, we have to, of course, know some members because you want to get your bills heard, and so we don't like attacking one another, but that happens too.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And what did you think of the process when it came to generating a bill?
Well, I don't. There are control issues that I have problems with, and that I always have had problems with. Is the committee chairman can kill a bill just by not hearing it.
Okay.
And also the leadership can kill it by just not assigning it to a committee or assigning it to a committee that they have control over. And in fact, they can sometimes they can assign it to a committee and then give notice to call the committee chairman and say, "Don't hear that bill." And if they want to have bills assigned to the committee, they're going to follow the speaker's orders on that. And I'm afraid I've lost bills for that reason.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it's very frustrating that leadership has such domination of the legislative process. And but I like the process of getting the debate in committee, the discussion in committee, getting witnesses. I always enjoyed that. But I like the amendment process too, where if your bill dies or your language dies, you can find a new home for it. The saying is, "It ain't over till it's over."
Right.
And sometimes the bill doesn't get a hearing or is not passed in the House. It goes to the Senate, and the Senate doesn't hear it. So you, in conference committee or in the House, you look for another place to put your language or part of your language. And sometimes you don't want it to be the exact language because they'll say it's a bill pending in committee, even though it's not pending because the committee chairman is refusing to hear it.
True.
But anyhow, you find a new home for your language, and I've done that so many times and over the years, and just find a new home. And that's why, I like the conference committee part where you reconcile differences between the House and Senate versions of the bill, and that's where you normally try to put your language when it fails in one place or the other. But if the committee, sometimes if you can develop opposition to the bill in your body, that they know if they have to accept your language if they want it to pass.
Yeah, okay.
I remember there was a woman named Virginia Blankenbecker. She refused to accept my language and on her bill, and she had a good bill. But I had some language I wanted to put into it, and she refused to accept it. And she said, "Well, you want to kill the bill?" And I said, "Well, I guess I am then." So I left and the meeting, and she then contacted me to let me know that my language was acceptable after all.
Wow.
So
okay.
And that was it was for another senator, but and Richard Young, but I was I guess I felt more strongly about my bill, but I was willing to let it die because she was refusing to even consider this other guy's language.
Yeah. Yeah.
It all worked out. I'm not sure in the end if I might have backed down too. She backed down before I did, though.
What was the process like when it came to trying to get support for a bill?
Well, that's important because you got to think about who supports your bill. I dealt over the years with a lot of the children's issues.
Yeah.
And I talked about the child abuse bill that passed after 4 years, but there were constant amendments to it, and I constantly changed it and added features, and whether it be the guardian ad litem or the court-appointed special advocate or what they call CASA, I added that, and then I added versions of that. So I had to call people that were concerned about whether it be the various children's groups, social service groups,
Yeah.
Sometimes the prosecuting attorneys, sometimes insurance agencies. Because I dealt with some, like a motorcycle helmet. I tried to reintroduce a motorcycle helmet bill, and so I actually worked with the insurance industry on that one, because they agreed with me on that one, with the Nurses Association and the Medical Association on that one. I lost that one, but nevertheless, you had to look for possible allies and call them and get them to come in as witnesses.
Sure.
Sometimes they didn't want to be a witness because they didn't want to offend people on the other side or the committee chairman. But anyhow, you did your best to get witnesses, and if you didn't have witnesses, you probably weren't going to be as successful.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes it was not necessary to have witnesses because it was a common sense motherhood and apple pie issues, and they happened on occasion too.
Right. How was legislative business conducted outside of formal votes and committee meetings?
Well, basically one-on-one communication.
Yeah.
With your colleagues and members of the House and members of the Senate, and there's groups that lobby one side or the other. They were usually standing in the hall, or in the lobby.
Right.
So they were readily available. And also you had communications of newsletters, and which to talk about the issues that anymore it seems like newsletters are something prepared by some ad agency. They don't really say anything other than promoting a couple of hot button issues. They're really just a waste of taxpayer dollars. And I used to sometimes write my own newsletters. Sometimes they were page after page. I'm sure most people didn't read them, but I would do my own newsletters. And then one thing that's changed also over the years is that staffing. They have large staffs now.
Yeah.
That we used to not have hardly any staff. We had a few people, but I think I shared a legislative assistant with something like 4 other legislators for years.
Wow.
And, but a guy named Mike Thrall, who I've not seen in years, I need to call him, talk to him, see how he's doing.
Yeah, okay. When it came to voting on legislation, did you have a good idea of how people would vote before they actually voted?
On many issues, yeah. But a lot of issues you don't know until it's over.
Yeah.
I remember one time my first child abuse bill that I did. I didn't know. I knew it would be close because the conservative Christian community was opposed to it.
Yeah.
They were fighting it because one minister was quoted as saying, "The blueness of the bruise cleanses away evil," and I'll always remember that quote. So he was basically saying, "The more you beat your child, the more you show you love your child." So.
Okay.
But
wow.
anyhow, they were opposed to it. So I was Republicans being so conservative. I was concerned that it might not pass. But there was a guy named Mendel Adams that got up and gave a speech, and he was my last speaker, and he talked about his abuse as a child. And there were people in tears.
Wow.
In fact, I was. And then I think his speaker or I think Mike Phillips, the majority leader, said, "You're not closing. That's good enough."
Yeah.
And so I didn't, and it was. Couldn't have been any stronger than that. So anyhow, I passed. It passed that year. It didn't pass the Senate because the Senate refused to give it a hearing. But nevertheless, that was shows that sometimes a speaker will carry the day for you.
Yeah.
And as I said, I didn't think it would actually pass because of the opposition, but it passed the House, as that they were successful in killing it in the Senate, but it did pass a couple years after that in the Senate too.
Yeah. Let's see. How influential was party leadership when it came to what legislation got passed or not?
Very influential.
Okay.
Probably more than anything else.
Okay. Wow.
I'm not, not necessarily more than anything, but they're very, very influential. Leadership, basically, they determine where the bills go in committee. They determine what we vote on. They do the calendar, and so they pretty much dominate the process. And it's one of the frustrations that I've always had as a legislator is that the leadership pretty much controlled everything. And I worry that a lot of that's determined by contributions too.
Okay.
And that sometimes you see issues that has no support in the community, but because powerful interests like utility companies,
Yep.
Electric companies, these issues just don't go away. They come back, and whether it be an issue allowing utilities to charge. Drink of water here. I'm losing my voice here.
Yeah, no worries.
Charge for construction work in progress, even though it's not completed yet, but they can pass it on to the consumer, and it's something that I always was against. But those kind of issues just never go away, and because we all know utility companies contribute a lot of money to political campaigns of both parties, and so you wonder why, and whether it be the liquor industry, all the same thing, insurance industry, medical industry, they seem to have a disproportionate voice in government, and a lot of people's groups don't. They get ignored. Or the Manufacturers Association, the Chamber of Commerce, and various major organizations, they just have huge voices.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the licensure groups that have big membership.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. How did the legislative service affect your family life?
Very hard. It's because you're gone so much.
Yeah.
And not just the time you're in the legislature, but when you're back home, you got something about every night. You got to go to meetings, political events, and constant fundraising. And at least fundraising in latter years, I was in the legislature, became more demanding. You had to raise more money. It's the cost of campaigning.
Sure.
But no, it's a problem, and I wouldn't. And I don't know how you're going to get around that, but because the time is such a demand.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. What were the most controversial legislative issues during your time in the Assembly?
Well, I think the issue of abortion has always been issue of abortion, issues of guns. For Democrats, they're very controversial because most Democrats are pro-choice.
Right.
My part of the state, that was not the case, though. Most Democrats in the southern part of the state were right-to-life Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And not all, but and then most Democrats believe in doing something about the guns.
Yeah.
But Republicans have their own issues down here, southern Indiana. Over the years, when I was in the legislature, organized labor was very influential, and Republicans were always under a lot of pressure, and there weren't too many Republicans in the southern part of the state.
Yeah.
But now the Republicans dominate the southern part of the state. I don't know how that's changed, but it's changed. I think there's one Democrat legislator in all of southwestern Indiana now, and it used to be they were almost done.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There used to be Democrats control the southwestern Indiana. Speaker of the House was southwestern Indiana, and now, as I said, there's only one from Evansville and all of southwestern Indiana, in fact. I can't think of, I guess Bloomington would be the next Democrat legislator.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one over around Seymour, somewhere in that area, too, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. What legislation would you say that you worked on was the most complex?
I think, I'm trying to think. I had a bill dealing with recycling and waste, and that was huge, very complex.
Okay.
And I think it was unnecessarily complex, and I had trouble explaining it.
Yeah.
So that was difficult. Most of the issues that I dealt with were not that. I understood them, and that's when I didn't understand all the ramifications of it. And it got to the Senate, though. It didn't get out of the Senate committee. And but I always and I had another bill dealing with emissions, waste emissions, that requiring the state to reduce certain emissions. And I had to bill dealing with mercury one time, another dealing with lead, and those were complex. I think mainly I didn't understand the issues, but I understood them enough to know that I was an environmentalist. I wanted to clean up the environment, but I wasn't exactly sure how to bring it about.
Right.
And, so that made it difficult. And the lead bill became law, and the mercury bill became law, but to reduce it, because I guess other legislators say, that's a good idea. Then I didn't have that much. I had good witnesses. That's what carried both those bills. But a guy named Tom, Tom's last name.
Okay.
He was a really good witness. So he represented children's environmental group, trying to make life healthier for children. And so he was such a good witness that he was helping get those two bills through. But witnesses are very important.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife would just remind me of a foster care bill that I carried, and
okay.
She that required that the state could offer foster care to 21, and she was, and I made her testify. She I don't think she wanted to testify, but she was one of them that encouraged me to do it. She was a part of a group, and so she became one of my witnesses and did a wonderful job.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Did that bill get passed?
Oh, yes, it did.
Okay.
The welfare department Department of Families and Social Services at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They interpreted it in such a way it took a few years before they actually enforced the law, though.
Okay.
The director at the time believed he didn't have to do anything he didn't want to do. But the people there now, I think, are actually doing it now. It keeps kids off the street and homeless, helps with issues of homelessness.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And what year was that?
I'm not sure what year that was. She remembers things like that. She's my brain. This 2008.
Okay, 2008. All right. Yeah. Let's see. What would you say was your proudest moment as a legislator?
I was, of course, obviously the issue is the child abuse bill becoming law. That's very important and probably one of the most significant bills that I dealt with. The first bill with a rape shield, first major bill that was important. But the issue that it passed in Indiana but never was a reality but it was such an important battle over the years is the Equal Rights Amendment.
Yes, okay.
To amend the Constitution, recognizing equality of rights for women. That was hugely important and something that I was so proud of, and that passed in Indiana. I think we were the last state to ratify
the
Equal Rights Amendment. Never got enough votes to make it a reality.
Right.
But anyhow, that was something we were all those of us that were involved in it were very proud of.
Yeah, sure.
We had I don't know if you saw the movie just recently with a woman that was leading the opposition called Stop ERA, Phyllis Schlafly. There was a movie just recently about her, and I met her when she was in Indiana at the hearing. She chastised me because I was wearing a pro-ERA button, and I was a member of the committee. So she thought that I already had my mind made up. I told her I did. I was campaigning in support of the Equal Rights Amendment, and I wasn't going to change my mind after I got elected. So, she chastised me for having my mind made up already. But that was a real fun issue to debate over the years.
Yeah.
And that's back when Democrats and Republicans supported the Equal Rights Amendment.
Yeah, okay.
We had a number of important Republicans that were co-authoring it, co-sponsoring it.
Yeah.
There were Democrats that opposed it. So it was an ideological issue, but not a partisan issue. And and also people could reason, seems like, based on the importance of the issue and the quality of the issue, and not the partisanship. And,
right.
anyhow, that was something I was really proud to be a part of. I was not the author of it or the sponsor of it, but I was very much involved as a member of the committee and as a member of the community and someone that debated it during the campaign and campaigned on it. So it was important.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, absolutely. What about the biggest hurdle you had to overcome during your time in office?
Well, obviously getting elected the first time. But,
yeah, sure.
I don't know. Over the years, I think the child abuse issue was a constant battle for several years.
Okay.
And having the support of the governor or the opposition of the governor initially, and then the governor changed his position, and it became law, and then constantly changing it, not changing the direction, but just making an incremental change to make it better, and adding elements to the bill. As I said, when we created the CASA, the Court-Appointed Special Advocate, was a program to get volunteers to help and be advocates for children that are abused or neglected. Those adding those elements to it over the years was important, and I know there were a number of children's organizations that work with me on those issues, and which were largely responsible and very helpful in becoming a reality.
Right.
And that's a really complex issue too. I know it's something that initially I didn't understand the depth of what you had to know to debate and argue those issues, but over the years became somewhat expert on the way the system worked. And I remember I used to sit down with Governor Bai to ask him to veto a bill, and I could explain why it needed to be vetoed, and he did veto it. And I can't remember, there was someone who was trying to undo elements of the child abuse laws dealing with the best interests of the child. And it's an issue, it's a part that I always work. Children should be kept in a home or removed from a home based on the best interests of the child.
Sure.
And not necessary to preservation of the family unit.
Right.
And so, but it's an issue that we made some improvement, but we did not totally change that.
Yeah, okay. And so how long would you say you were working on the child abuse legislation? Like, how many years do you think this process of trying to get bills?
Probably all 36.
Wow, okay. So are there like
things that
just different aspects of the problem?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Whether it be homelessness,
yep,
which is an issue, whether it be foster care, whether the guardian ad litem, that's an attorney that represents the interests of the child in court. Whether it be a CASA, court-appointed special advocate, some volunteers to represent the interests of the child outside the courtroom. Whether it be the reporting law, creating the child protection service, the child protection team.
yep,
All these things over the years, whether it be evidence, requiring gathering of evidence, and who will pay for it. As I said, homelessness, and there are several elements of that we had to deal with over the years. But there would be people that would call me prior to every session and say, "I want you to look at this particular thing." And there was a woman named Becky Pryor from Indianapolis, and she was the head of a children's group, and I dealt with so many issues that she brought to my attention, and then I had local people here in Evansville that did the same thing, but they were that was something I was involved with probably the full 36 years. My first bill dealing on that subject didn't pass until the fourth year. It passed the House a couple times, but it got to the Senate the fourth year. But anyhow, that's an issue that really, if I were still there, I'd probably come up with things that needed to be done.
yeah,
Because it's something that just an issue doesn't go away there. As long as children are dying for abuse or neglect, there's going to be a need to see why it happened.
sure, yeah,
Issues of adoption, that's an issue too. I remember one time I had a bill that some people we knew had adopted a child to the welfare department. They used to be called the welfare department. And the welfare department didn't inform the people of the serious problems this child had until the child, I think, tried to kill their pets.
mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
So they returned the child to the welfare department. Can you imagine the trauma for the parents that did that, or the child that
Yeah.
tossed, thrown back?
Yeah.
And it's because the parents, the people that adopted this child, didn't have the slightest idea what they were getting into.
Right.
And so I had a bill to require that the department fully disclose all of the health and mental psychiatric treatment and all the health issues about the child. And that passed and became law. And my witnesses were the parents that did it. And the department tried to find it, and Republicans were furious that that their own Republican welfare department were fighting that. So I had some real allies.
Yeah.
That just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of issues that come up every year that you're in the legislature, and people bring issues to your attention that you never dreamed was a problem.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. Let's see. I have some questions about some legislation I read that you had some involvement in, that I did some research on and found in some of the old newspapers in our archives and stuff. I read that there was some criticism of short sessions that you might have had. Is that true? Where you want?
Probably.
Okay. Where you want?
I always had. I never liked short sessions because there just isn't enough time to deal with the important issues. And in fact, I believe that the legislature should be a more professional legislature.
Okay. Yeah.
And in longer. And I don't necessarily believe it should be full time, but it seems like you go up there and you expect. They say it's only for emergency issues and budgetary issues that we need to correct from the long session, but it's far more than that. It's just a shorter session, and I know I introduced bills that were not an emergency. I know, and so did all the other legislators, at least
right
that I'm aware of, and but it is the legislature certainly the staffing and leadership and lobbyists and the administrative branch, they pretty much spoon feed legislators what needs to be done, and the short session is even worse because we don't have time to deal with these important issues. We didn't.
Yeah. Okay. I also read about some statement you made about maybe trying to reform the Electoral College, or in some way.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I believe that we should have a direct election for president, but I'm trying to think of what I did on that. Patty said I did assignment of electoral votes by congressional district. That's not what I was thinking of, but I did a bill one time that was patterned after Colorado. I can't think of what that did though. It didn't pass because
right.
Republicans opposed it that year, and a few years later, Democrats opposed it.
Okay.
Because Speaker Bauer opposed it. Anyhow, and I think it's necessary. But it just isn't coming to my mind what that was.
No worries, that's okay.
But election reform is such an important issue.
Yeah.
Especially at the presidential elections.
Sure. Yeah, I know it's definitely garnered a fair amount of controversy these last few years.
Well, I know what I was thinking of. It was the reapportionment. I had a bill dealing with the bipartisan reapportionment commission.
Oh, okay.
And even Speaker Bosma had a similar bill, except Speaker Bosma wanted to allow the Supreme Court Chief Justice to be a member, and the Democrats opposed it because the Supreme Court Chief Justice at the time was Randy Shepard, the person that ran against me as a Republican, and he also ran for mayor as a Republican, and he was Republican County Chairman in Vanderbilt County before he was appointed to the Superior Court in Vanderbilt County. But so, needless to say, the Republicans had a 3-2 majority on the Reapportionment Commission, so that's why Democrats opposed it at that point.
Yeah.
And but my bill would have allowed 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and the 4 members would then appoint a 5th person who would serve as chairman.
Okay.
And that's what Colorado did at that time, at least.
Yeah.
And it would have forced them to pick someone they could all agree with, and it had to be a consensus pick.
Yeah.
So one of the arguments they made is who in the hell in Indiana would be a consensus pick of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it didn't get a hearing and did not become law. Obviously, the Democrats always assumed that we're going to be a majority and control the reapportionment process, and we did for 20 years. But we got, but then the Republicans got it, and they have a majority right now that I don't think can be overcome.
Yeah.
Because anymore, reapportionment is done with computers.
Right.
And I don't know how you could. Back then, we used to sit down with pencils and draw little maps and say, "Oh, my atlas in that neighborhood, I want that."
Right.
But that kind of thing. But now it's you can pick draw your districts to make it almost impossible to overcome. In Indiana, where Democrats just cannot get the majority or in any of these legislative districts except one, and that's because they've drawn the district so Democratic in that one that a Republican can't win. In fact, I don't even think they have an opponent. I don't know what they do. They've appointed someone. That's right. But anyhow, they draw them in such a way that there was a time when Marion County had 15 legislators, and they had 3-member districts back then, and so there were 5 3-member districts, and Democrats only had 3 members because they put all the inner city into that 3-member district, and all the other districts they kind of went out into the suburbs to dilute the vote for Democrats, and so anyhow we couldn't elect members, so they started out in the majority 12-3 to see who's going to be in the majority in the legislature.
Right.
And they did the same thing in Allen County, and they had 2 3-member districts there, and in Vanderbilt County they had 2 2-member districts.
Okay.
So anyhow, they don't do. When we got the majority, I forget what year, 80, I believe, or 90. Yeah. Anyhow, we drew the all single-member districts, and so we don't have that multi-member district concept. So I felt that was a real positive change.
Yeah. Okay.
For one thing, you fight with your own running mate or running mates.
Yeah.
I had a running mate one time that had a press conference and blasted me, and not the Republicans. That was the Equal Rights Amendment. He blasted me because I supported the Equal Rights Amendment. So,
wow. Yeah.
So anyhow, I don't think it's a good idea to have multi-member districts.
Right.
But I'm sorry, I got distracted there.
Oh, no worries. No, it's interesting. Yeah. Let's see. Another thing I read was there was some controversy going on while you were in the General Assembly about uh, motorcycle helmet legislation. Do you remember anything about that?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was a tough one. We had a bill. Republicans, they passed a bill repealing the helmet law. We had a helmet law in Indiana.
Okay.
Requiring motorcycle helmets, and a few years later, the Republicans repealed it,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course we had an increase in deaths, motorcycle helmets, and I voted against the repeal, and so a few years after that, I introduced a bill requiring helmets again, trying to restore the helmet law.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that earlier. The insurance industry supported me. It's probably the first time the insurance industry supported me on anything.
Yeah.
But and the medical association, the hospital association, the nurses association, I had a lot of wonderful witnesses. But the bikers, I know they were joking with me that don't go in a room where you smell leather. Because there were bikers all over the place.
Yeah.
But anyhow, they won, and I fought the good fight, and it was very, very close. But so many legislators just did not want to go up against the motorcyclist. And,
wow.
But I didn't win all my battles, but I had a lot of good battles, and that was really a fun year, honestly. I remember I probably got I think that was the only threat of my life I got. But
Okay.
I reported some guy to the state police because he said, I know where you live and I know where your family lives.
Wow.
Lives and works.
Yikes.
So
Jeez.
that was one I couldn't take lightly.
Of course. Yeah, that's crazy.
They escorted him out of the building, and I think that's the only time that I've got political threats, but that's the only one I've ever got in my life, I believe.
Yeah, especially over motorcycle helmets. Wow, that's
yeah.
That's kind of,
that was their freedom, just like today is their freedom is not, they don't have to wear a mask.
yeah.
They ride free.
Right. Well, now I shift towards some kind of big picture reflecting questions on your overall time in the assembly. What would you say the public does not know about the Indiana General Assembly and how it works?
Well, they don't really. A lot of people, I'm not saying the public in general, but a lot of people think that we live in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
to start with.
Yeah.
And they don't really have a grasp of that we're actually in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. And but I think another thing is they think that we don't listen.
Okay.
And I believe that when my experience in the legislature, at least, is that we did listen. In fact, sometimes we were listened too much.
Yeah.
And one thing is that we reacted to too much pressure, that we didn't do what was right. We backed down, like the motorcycle helmet bill, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Political pressure or pressure from our constituents. I remember another group that was the Tea Party people.
Okay.
Or sometimes called teabaggers, but the Tea Party people, they were really loud and obnoxious at times.
Yeah.
But they put a lot of pressure on the legislature, and at least Republicans really, I think, were fearful of that group.
Wow.
And there are a lot of groups. It's just not. There are left-wing groups too that do the same thing.
Right.
Not as bad as the Tea Party, I don't believe, though. They were awful, really rude.
Wow.
On several occasions, we had some nice people that were members of of Tea Party groups too that really were concerned about things like higher taxes and
Yeah.
so not all people, but there were people that really just they got training that I think was inappropriate about being disruptive in committee meetings and meet your legislative programs. They were not refusing to sign the roster to testify.
Mm-hmm.
They just started screaming at one group at one meeting that I attended, trying to be disruptive. And but thankfully we had a great big guy that was chairman of the meeting and shut him down real fast.
Yeah. Okay.
But over the years, I think where I'm going now. You were talking about what my constituents don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Patty was talking about the fact that anytime we had a special session, they thought we were getting rich because but don't realize that we're also missing out on working back home.
Right.
Part-time legislature.
Yeah.
We have lives back home that we're supposed to be, and some of us, we're missing out on our income back home, and
Yeah.
and we don't have a law firm that where you continues to go and function.
Right.
And even lawyers, they miss out on the income too. I remember legislators that would work on weekends when they came home from Indianapolis, trying to get some billable hours in law firms.
Wow.
But, my wife is pointing out my electoral college bill.
Yeah.
But she says 1712 in 2009. Yeah, I do. But anyhow, I don't remember the nuts and bolts of that. But
yeah. Okay.
They just told me that. Oh, yeah, allowed to vote by. Requiring you to vote by congressional district.
And district.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just like the Supreme Court just ruled too, and I think also it's same with Nebraska and with Maine. Also, they're two states that have similar law requirements.
Yeah, I think so.
I'd forgotten I did that bill. I think I forgot it because quite often my bills were to make a point and not necessarily because I knew it was going to become law.
Right. Okay.
Because sometimes you have to express your viewpoint on important changes that need to be made.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
I did that a few times.
What, in your opinion, would you say is the most important work of the Indiana General Assembly?
Probably the budget.
Okay.
I was a member of Ways and Means Committee for several years, and then I was also the Democrat on the Budget Committee in the House for several years too.
Mm-hmm. What were?
One of the one of the permanent changes that the legislature, I was going to say can't, but it would be very difficult for them to do is take away important projects. For example, if you build a building at Ivy Tech in Evansville,
Mm-hmm.
or a building at the University of Southern Indiana, that a new library or a new performing arts center or something like that, it's there. It's going to benefit students for many years, and they can't repeal that. Although in the next session legislature could undo everything you've accomplished.
Yeah.
As Trump has tried to do with Obama.
Right.
But they really can't take away some of the important projects that we're able to fund as a member of the Budget Committee. So I like the budget. Didn't always like the process, but because it's too often controlled by leadership, that was very frustrating.
Right.
But nevertheless, it was another good learning experience. Of course, as a member of the budget committee, I got to travel the state. I got to have dinner with the president of Indiana University at his home, and where he could talk about his budget, when it was important. I got to meet with the president of Purdue, and have dinner with them, Martin Jeske, and got to go through prisons and see how horrible they really are.
Yeah.
And talk about funding issues. Those are really good learning experiences, and no better way of finding out what needs to be done than doing that. But I'm afraid that after all that work of a whole summer or whole year, or whole 2 years sometimes,
yeah,
then the budget's decided in a closed door by the leaders of the House and the Senate, and members of the budget committee not even in the room, and then they that's when the budget sometimes breaks down. The leadership just says, "Well, we're taking it over." And then they cut their own private deals, and you don't know what happened and why that happened. But that happens too often.
Right.
I remember one time, for some reason, compromise happened, and the leaders in the House and Senate of both parties got a new building in their legislative district for their various universities, and I don't know, but those things happen.
Okay. Yeah, it is interesting to see how things, change, and that also made me think when you're talking about some of this. It made me think about the way government expenditures work. For example, when it came to raising taxes and spending money, were there a lot of ongoing debates throughout your time in the General Assembly?
Right. There was always debate over tax issues. The one thing that is consistent with Republicans is they're against taxes.
Okay, so that was
until it becomes obvious they got to raise it, and in order for government to function, and they do that in the state legislature. They eventually will raise the money. They'll come up with so-called reasons that they'll reduce taxes. They say it's a tax reduction. In reality, it's a tax increase, but quite often. But it's something that's always under debate. And Democrats are pretty bad at it too. I remember one time we had we're always talking about the need for adequate funding for education and social services and environmental protection. And there was a budget year where we're in the majority, and so we had a bill to give everybody in the state, all taxpayers, $100.
Okay.
And that was over $100 million that we were frittering away as a political gimmick.
Yeah.
And it passed the House because we were in the majority, and it had one no vote, and that was me. I voted no.
Yeah.
And one Democrat no vote. All the Republicans voted no because they were going to do something even more outlandish.
Okay.
But and that same year, I almost lost my committee assignments. But that same year, there was another bill, and our Democrats had a so-called education reform package, and a part of that was that in counties over, I believe it was 125,000, maybe 150,000, whatever, I can't remember exactly, it required that students in the school districts in that county had to wear a uniform. And there were 2 no votes on that one among the Democrats, and I was one of those.
Wow, okay.
I voted against our budget and our tax bill, and also against our so-called education reform bill.
Wow.
And there was something else that was also stupid that we did. I can't remember what that was. But anyhow, that was the most absurd session. And because it was just pandering and posturing, and so I voted. I just thought well, I'm going to be in trouble over this. But I remember going back to Evansville, and we had a meeting with the legislator, and I explained it, my votes, and the room was overwhelmingly supportive of me on both instances.
Okay.
And the other legislators, I think, found out that that was not as smart as they thought, and they got a lot of criticism over it. And I ended up came out smelling like a rose on that one.
Yes.
But I wasn't sure that would be the case, though.
Right, of course. What allowed you to go against the grain, against your own party and stuff? What kind of...
I've always done that. Honestly, I think to some extent I never thought that I would get elected the first time I ran.
Okay.
And then I thought, well, I'm not going to be here permanently, so I just wanted to see if I could accomplish things over the years.
Yeah.
And so, but most of the things I did were things that really helped me with the public and with and the people I cared about. So.
Right. Sure.
I was always somewhat in trouble with my leadership. I know one time I forget what I did, but I got moved to the back of the room, lost my better seat, and got put in the very back row.
Wow.
And another time I lost my office. We had a cubicle. We had a little office I shared with a guy named John Day. And so they put me in a cubicle area with the freshmen. And that's after serving several terms.
So they basically tried to punish you for?
Yeah, it was. It was a way of punishing me. Another time, I lost all my committee assignments. That was over not voting for Mike Phillips for leadership, and I voted for Stan Jones for Speaker of the House. And there was a saying: if you're going to beat the king, you're going to kill the king, you better kill him, because you're going to regret it. So anyhow,
yeah.
I lost my committee assignments over that one. I got committee assignments, but they were not very important committees, so I had to endure bad committee assignments for 2 years. And then I got better committee assignments the next time because, I know what it was. We were 50-50. No, when we were 50-50, Mike Phillips realized he had to have the 50 Democrats.
Yeah.
If he lost one Democrat on important issues, he couldn't govern. So anyhow, they decided to. That's when I got Ways and Means Committee. So anyhow, they decided they needed to work with me.
Yeah. Okay. So, was it always considered to be kind of taboo to go against your party on legislation throughout your time serving?
Most of the time, it is, but most issues aren't partisan, though.
Okay.
They, excuse me, lose my voice here.
Oh, no worries.
Most issues just aren't partisan, but on the very, very partisan issues, it's not a good idea to go against your leadership, especially if your leadership has the ability to inflict damage on you.
Yeah. What about the... Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, what about the influence of money in state politics? How big of an influence was there?
I think it's very important to leadership, because leadership raises a ton of money to support their membership. And as I said, the first time I ran, I raised $350, and I won basically were just hard work, and the fact that I had a legislative or election trend going in my favor.
Yeah.
Don't want to diminish that importance, but leadership, and the lobbyists and the organizations that support leadership, it's very important to them because I think they control the process that way. And I was able to win without the requirement of money.
Okay.
There was one election where or two elections where I was targeted, and so they spent a lot of money to beat me, and I had to raise money too. But a lot of that money that I raised came from groups that support Democrats, like teachers and labor and trial attorneys.
Yep.
And but I didn't have to change my position on anything because I normally supported those issues that they were concerned about.
Right.
And also legislative leadership helped me with a couple of those. Despite the fact that I was somewhat a problem with them at times, they also wanted my number, my seat was added to the majority or the minority, increased the minority. They supported keeping me there because the alternative was a Republican.
Hmm.
I think I only got challenged. I never got challenged by the Democrat leadership in the primary. I got challenged by Democrats in my county once, but it was just basically, I think they didn't really think they were going to beat me. They just thought they would slap me with a little bit with a candidate.
Sure. Let's see. So I think you already touched upon this earlier in the interview, but what was the thing that made you leave the Indiana General Assembly?
Well, I think the extreme partisanship that was occurring, but there was some other issues too. It was no longer as much fun, for one thing, and I didn't. I'm trying to think how to do this, but I don't want to. Anyhow, It gets old. The part that gets old is asking people for contributions.
Yeah.
And you got to seem like people thought, well, you're having fundraisers all the time, and in reality you are.
Yeah.
Because you got to the point where you have to come up with a different angle on fundraising that wouldn't offend people, that allows them to contribute to you and not. And they got to feel like they're getting something. They might, one time we had one of my hobbies, and my wife's, and my hobby is we can jellies and jams.
Okay.
So we had biscuits and jelly breakfast, and that was something people eat our biscuits and our jelly.
Oh, okay.
But that was those kind of, and then we had I had some folk singers that are friends of ours that are. One of them is John Prine's lead guitar.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you know who John Prine is, but he just recently died of COVID-19.
Oh, okay.
Nationally known folk singer.
Yeah. I think.
But anyhow, just little fundraisers like that. And but the other thing that I said I don't really know in 2009 there was an issue came up in Ways and Means Committee, and I was a member of the Ways and Means Committee. I was a ranking Democrat on the committee. I was the chairman, of course, but there was one of the freshman members. One of the Democrats' bill was being heard, Terry Gooden, but one of the freshman members questioned the bill, and I agreed with the freshman,
Hmm.
and another freshman also agreed. But it was a bill to let everyone in school have a free hearing aid. And this freshman, and the three of us basically, thought that was a good idea, that there at least be some kind of an income required, that there be I forget what the word is, but
Yeah.
that you had income had to means tested. My wife, as I said, corrects me all the time. That there be a means testing. That,
Okay.
That not everybody gets a free hearing aid.
Right.
That if you're a millionaire, if you're Donald Trump, your kids shouldn't get free hearing aids.
Right.
And so anyhow, it was a minor thing, and they kind of agreed. The Republicans really were against it, all of them.
Yeah.
And the three Democrats. So anyhow, then this freshman filed a motion. Did a motion to table the bill, and I thought, well, that's a good idea. We'll just, because you bring it back, and after you've made some changes, and we'll all support it.
Right.
And the Ways and Means chairman was finally against tabling it, and he just was really angry. So anyhow, we had the vote, and it was tabled. The Republicans all voted to table it, and the three Democrats voted to table it. Anyhow, I got called to the Speaker's office, and he screamed at me and yelled at me like I'd not been yelled at, like I was a child.
Jeez. Oh my gosh.
And he had his attorney with him, so so he have a witness what he was saying.
Yeah.
Wouldn't tell the truth probably, but anyhow, and then my bills that were in committee, I'd already had a few out in committee, so they couldn't stop those. But some of the bills that were still in committee, and I had commitments for hearings. All of a sudden, they said, "Nope, I'm not going to hear that bill. I'm not going to hear that bill." Different committees, and so anyhow, I lost several bills as a result of that, and just basically, it seemed like he was wanting to punish me, and I've been there a long time,
Right.
36 years. So anyhow, I decided I wasn't going to run.
Yeah.
I wasn't for sure at that point, but later on I decided not to. But I was just not going to put up that crap anymore.
Sure.
And I'd not been yelled at like that before. I'd been punished, but understood politics. But
Right.
it was
Right.
rude. And so anyhow, I decided, well, he's not going to go anywhere, so I will.
Yeah.
It was my best interest to just go do something else.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy. Wow.
Yeah. So anyhow, that was one reason, but I wasn't enjoying the process as much anymore either. So.
Yeah. It sounded like it didn't become much fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one thing about the legislature. I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was enjoyed doing these things, and I enjoyed the process, and it wasn't much fun anymore.
Right.
That's just that they weren't letting me do anything.
Yeah. That's right. Kind of defeats the point. Yeah. Do you have a favorite story or anecdote from your time as a legislator?
I can't think of any honestly right now.
Okay. No problem.
But I've told several where to go.
Yeah.
But Bill Schlaffer getting on to me.
Right. Do you have any regrets as a legislator?
Probably that I think maybe I felt a need to accomplish too much.
Okay.
And, there were sessions that I just introduced too damn many bills.
Right.
And knowing that there was a lot of overload, and sometimes maybe you introduce something just to make a point that you I might have thought better of it, doing other things. But anyhow, I do some of those things were, supporting to make those points, like the motorcycle helmet bill. I didn't think that was going to become law, but I thought that that people were dying because they weren't wearing helmets, and most states did require helmets, and yet Indiana repealed a bill that was saving lives. So anyhow, those kind of things are important, whether it be environmental bills that we have global warming now. And,
right.
And there are people say, well, what did you do? I had a bill one time to require reduction in emissions from the utilities that would help with global warming years and years ago. And I had a bill dealing with electoral college and a bill to deal with reapportionment. And these are all things that still they're talking about the need to reform the electoral college, and yet I had a bill years ago to do that.
Right.
But so I don't regret too much.
Yeah. Okay.
I enjoyed the process and
that's
enjoyed
good.
the battles. I think I took some bruises that were damaging though.
Yeah.
Like motorcycle helmet bill. But,
yeah.
But sometimes the amendments that you support have a lasting damage and effect too, and that's because Democrats and Republicans. I'm not going to blame just Republicans, but we did the same thing.
Right.
Legislators introduced amendments to damage each other, and those have a lasting effect on legislators too, and politicians. It's more difficult.
Yeah. So, since
I'm honestly considering my voting record, I'm surprised that I served 36 years.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you got some pushback. Yeah. During your time, so that is pretty interesting.
I come from southern Indiana, and I had and I served 36 years or 18 terms, which is a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm a liberal.
Yeah.
That's very difficult.
Right. Sure.
But as I said earlier, I like to think myself as no nonsense kind of a liberal, that I don't support waste, and I support good government.
Right.
I try to determine when it's that eliminate waste wherever I can. That's why we're involved with government restructuring, government reorganization, and eliminate waste and duplication.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that we still do a lot of that.
So, since you served so long in the General Assembly, what advice would you give to future legislators or even current legislators?
Well, I would basically encourage people to get involved in government but stand for something.
Yeah.
And I think too often legislators enjoy being legislators and not doing something as a legislator, using the office to do good things for their constituents. And another thing is listen to their constituents. You don't have to buckle under and do everything, because you talk to 10 constituents and you're going to get 10 different opinions on what you
right.
want to do.
Right.
But it is important to listen to people, because most of the ideas for bills that I had came from a conversation I had with someone, and I didn't. Sometimes it's just a conversation where you accept that's a good idea. We need to do something about that. You don't necessarily do what the constituent wanted, but you find a way of addressing the issue, and don't have to just rubber stamp everything people tell you, but
Yeah.
they wouldn't be bringing these issues to our attention if there wasn't a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. See, last few questions here. How has the state of Indiana changed over the course of your lifetime?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah. How has the state of Indiana changed over the course of your lifetime?
Well, I think dramatically, in that politics has gotten more divisive,
Right.
far more conservative, and we have one-party total domination. We've had one-party control a lot over the years, but there's been a give and take far more than I think we see now.
Yeah.
And my first 2 years were Democrats in the majority because of a landslide, and then, but for the next, I think 18 years, Republicans controlled state government, but I don't think they ever had a super majority. I think they had the majorities, but it was somewhat close at times. But they always controlled the Senate, though. That's the one, with the exception of 2 years. But they always controlled the Senate, and for the most part, it's not often been all that close. Now it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Once they control it. But I think that's changed too, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I think some of the interest groups that used to have a lot of input are pretty much locked out of the process now, like educators,
Mm-hmm.
working people, organized labor. I don't think they have nearly the input that they used to have.
Right.
And that's I think largely because of one-party controlled process. And I think people concerned about the environment are ignored in Indiana, and I think that's unfortunate.
Sure.
But it's just Indiana just become far more conservative than when I served.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely has. And I guess you already mentioned earlier just how much the politics has shifted to kind of being more toxic in terms of the relationship between politicians and the state, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What, if any, enduring qualities do Hoosiers still have or hold dear?
I'm trying to think of things that consistently I think people still believe that they can talk to their legislators
Okay.
and although I think too many people think they can't, but I think there's still the core of people that still believe that they can talk to governmental leaders and have a positive impact on them.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I said earlier that's unfortunately something that a lot of people don't think they can do.
Right. Yeah. Last question. What do you...
Also,
Yeah.
I'm very positive about some of the progressive organizations that are starting to come forward too. I remember I was a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Okay.
In 2016.
Right.
And a group called Our Revolution which was something that came about because of the Sanders campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And now, since then, also a group called Indivisible, which is another progressive organization.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah.
They started they organized in Evansville, and the chairman of our party, the vice chairman, and the secretary, I think, are all came out of the Indivisible campaign. And so we have progressive organizations that have gotten involved in at least Democrat politics.
Yeah.
And I see some really good, sharp young people. And I remember when I commented to the Bernie Sanders rally, I got to introduce him.
Oh, really?
And,
okay.
And so in the rally, I said I was involved in the Eugene McCarthy campaign. It's basically a lot of college students, that campaign. And I said that during McCarthy campaign, that all those young people that were involved, and that was we had a large group. I'm the only one that stayed in politics. The rest of them just faded away. It disappeared.
Wow.
And but I'm the only one that stayed in politics, and I hope that didn't happen in the Sanders campaign and
right.
subsequent the Indivisible. Well, the Indivisible people were not necessarily Sanders people, though.
Okay.
They were just, I think, progressive that believed in good government and getting involved, and also a lot of them were just anti-Trumpers too, which is a positive thing, I think.
Yeah.
But a lot of these people were still involved, and they're taking over the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Which I think is very healthy. So we need some new people take over our party and get rid of some of the dead weight.
It's definitely started to change a lot. That's true.
Yep.
Did you get to talk with Sanders at all?
Oh yeah, I did. I got to. Well, there were so many people around him that
right.
there wasn't much of a conversation. But I got a hug from Sanders, and I got a hug from Jane, his wife.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But got some photographs. But
yeah.
But as I said, he had a lot of supporters there. So we had about, I think someone said 5,000 rally, but it was a nice rally, and but it was a good experience. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But this campaign, I'm afraid, this campaign, I did not support Sanders. I supported Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But
yeah.
Sanders was my second choice. But
right.
I've always admired Elizabeth Warren for many years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I also was politically believed that she had a better chance of actually winning, even though I was wrong. It didn't turn out for either one of them. But,
yeah.
I think I've only supported one candidate from the beginning that became that won, and that was Obama.
Okay. Yeah.
I usually pick the losers.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to predict how politicians will do. I mean, there's so many stages, and yeah.
I know I was a Gary Hart supporter years ago, and the George McGovern. And,
oh, okay. Yeah.
Various people that didn't succeed.
Right. Let's see. So, what do you want Hoosiers to know about their role in relation to the function of the Indiana General Assembly?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Yeah. What do you want Hoosiers to know about their role in relation to the function of the Indiana General Assembly?
Well, I think I would like for them to know more that they do have a voice.
Yeah.
And that and if they express, there are issues that we haven't the slightest idea. We don't really understand a lot of these issues, and sometimes we don't get any input other than the lobbyist.
Right.
And they're paid to express their viewpoint or their interest group, and there are people that come forward, talk to us and meet your legislators, or write us letters, or meet us on the street, that can explain these how they're impacted by those issues. And I just want people to know that they can have a voice.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
And I think legislators that listen are more successful than those that ignore them. And so hopefully legislators listen to those people that do have expertise.
Yeah.
Because we get a couple thousand bills introduced during session, maybe more. I'm not even sure how many are introduced now, but we don't have expertise in all those issues, and there are people out there that do.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. It definitely would be useful if more people realize that they have an impact in politics. So, let's see. Do you have any questions for me at all? Is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to mention, or?
No, I'm sure there are tons of things I'd like to talk about, but I can't think of what they are right now.
Okay, no worries.
Pretty good discussion.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you so much for doing this and taking part. This should be a good addition to the collection of interviews that we're creating, and yeah, really thankful that you're willing to help out with the project. So.
Oh, no problem, and feel free to call if you have any other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
More than happy to talk about these issues.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since I did not run in 2010.
Right.
And so it's been a few years, and I'm a little rusty on some of these things, but
yeah.
But I appreciate the chance to talk about some of these things, because I've missed doing that.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm glad that I could get you sort of back in touch with state politics and hear about your experiences. So it's very, very useful. So
one of the things that I know I've told myself and I've tried to do is over the last several years is to work with young people, to get more young people involved in politics. I know I've recruited candidates that have run, that are currently running in office.
And
I think that's perhaps my role now. Is to get some really good, sharp young people involved in politics and to see them succeed.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And, so I'm doing that now, and we'll hopefully continue to do that for a while.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's a good way for you to stay involved. So that's.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well,
and I'm still a precinct committeeman too. So.
Right.
Of
course.
I don't think that's a very important thing anymore, but with the changes in recent years, but
sure.
But still, it keeps me. I get to go to meetings.
Yeah.
That's when they open up and let us go to meetings.
Yeah, there you go. That works. All right. Well.
Okay.
Thanks again for doing this. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.